Welcome to my channel Sell a Buzz. Parker Schnabel. Gold Rush's face, the cute little kid who ever pulled million years from now. Earth is no longer frozen. He's behind the wheel of a digger. He's after being crushed behind locked doors. Decision in one of the most shocking environmental cases in the history of mining. Schnabel has lost his gold kingdom, cold, and the sentence was life in prison with no release and no chance to appeal. This is the same Parker who money from college to start a mining company, who dug up gold worth more than 13 million by 24 people who made mud into TV gold and made 24 million during just season 14. But now he's made 16 million. His dominion is frozen from this year on. Creek says are being looked into, and fans still have one big question. How did the most diligent person do? Going from having a minor in TV history TOA tale to lock up Parker Schnabel has been under a lot of stress before. The gold game, since he was a 15-year-old by 24, he had already been pulled over for $13 million worth of gold out of the ground. Just in season 14, his team made $24 million. And we're now in season 15 with the gold prices are going through the roof. He should be happy, but he's not. He's about to lose all of his money. An accident, and now something much. It was gloomy because between chasing pounds and trying to leave a memory Parker own choice that changes everything, that's where the story changes. Going straight into a courtroom, Parker had one number on his keep in mind, that the goal was 10,000 ounces. That's more than $26 worth of gold right now. Million, which is a lot. But to get there, he had to do more than just work hard. A lot of work, good pay, and no delays. And then he did something that raised head and then an alarm. He spent $2.5 million on 2 gold run in Sulphur Creek have huge claims. There weren't just any dirt spots here. In history, they were some of the richest. There are places in the whole Klondike that created $1.5 billion worth of gold in the last 100 years, but they were also risky, bare ground, shaky ground, unknown risks that Parker didn't not delay. He wanted a chance to be great. He was ready to throw everything in order for the new claims to be true. Parker had to move his largest wash, plant Bob, on the land that Ken and Stuart own. It took 25 miles to get to Sulphur Creek, the longest he had ever tried. He gave Heist team only has 10 hours to pull it off. That's not only tight, it's crazy, but just barely. They pulled it off. Worked quickly to fix broken parts. Tyson Lee pulled the strings, and Bob was finally things up and running for a while. It looked great in just 4 days. Bob pulled in 90.050, worth $766,000. Add one more, 276. 10 from Roxanne at the cut arm, and their team passed the 6,000 mark. $6 million in the books, and that made the risk look like a good idea. But the clock was going faster as they dug deeper into Dominion. The bigger problems are in Creek and Bridgecut. Big Red Parker's working wash came to the surface. The plant died after 12 years and over $53 million in gold for the tension bars, snapped, shutting down the whole process. Taking that plant offline had made 3,300 ounces over the years, and now it, Wasonly, Bob and Roxanne were left to run. Parker no longer had room for mistakes. Had to have everything go well, but what you didn't see on TV was the start of the potential trouble in his haste to make his promises bigger and get every last drop out before winter. Parker made quick deals on things he bought, claims made by neighbors, under a private aid deal that didn't cover environmental go over the steps and the time his team got. The work done at Sulphur Creek, people asked about permits, about making changes to a protected river, about old gas tanks that were hidden on the... There were property questions that didn't have. You likely didn't notice the clean replies. The first signs of a check being laid. Officials from the government paid a quiet call. But there were warning signs, and as Parker worked harder to run business, there are 247s carrying thousands of yards of gravel through places that are safe for those red. First there were flags, then papers, and then federal charges that really shocked everyone. Were filed charges against Parker for reckless, not small violations of the environment, huge problems caused by illegal digging of streams that are nationally protected, carelessness in getting rid of trash, all tied, going back to the $2.5 million land deal. When the police looked more closely, they found more paperwork needed for the permit, more than one. And worst of all, faked reports of inspections, signed by freelancers who are supposedly working for Parker's direction. All of a sudden the show wasn't not about ounces anymore. It was about authorities used evidence to say that Parker knowingly made his business go beyond the law to meet his 10,000-ounce goal. He skipped over and didn't care about warns and cares for the environment and at risk for public safety in court, though the numbers were damning. 68 were recorded, breached more than $3.1 million in illegal changes to the site soil that is dirty around machine areas, and more than 8,000 gallons of gas. Parker's defense didn't account for movement. The team tried to use the emergency brake. They said everything was wrong, and that workers had failed to do their jobs. Paperwork was all that was missing. Permits delays that were not meant to be broken the rules, but when the emails were found, things got messy in court. One thread from the beginning of the season showed Parker calling for production to stop at any time and telling his team not to care about agency. That message didn't just get lost. Look around. It kept coming up again and again. Again and again it did. The courtroom became less noisy after the case. Moved an old crew member who had stepped away in the middle of the season making claims that Parker knew what it was he was doing that he had been told more than once about. The not completed paperwork and the crimes that he still did anyway. All of a sudden, this wasn't a discussion about who was to blame. It was a full-blown focus on a boss who was under a lot of stress, doing everything they could to reach 10,000-ounce goal. The results were terrible. The charges piled up like gold. Environmental wrongdoing leads to site damage inspection reports that were not true. When they dug on government land, it wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern that the lawyers choosing not to follow the rules, and when they made the list. With obstruction, things changed from important to work-related in the end. The court didn't hold it back, ruled that Parker's acts met the most damage to the world, triggering rules for sentencing that shocked everyone who saw it. But here's the twist: while the news screamed something the line itself didn't say, no one used the word in the whole story. In jail, there was no dramatic mugshot. No walk of shame on TV. Parker instead stopped being in the spotlight. Quietly and covertly, whispers spread. Some said he was talking about paying people back. Some said he was in protective custody. But no one knew what to do. And that. There was more quiet than anything else. This Parker Schnabel was the Discovery Channel's golden boy. The kid who began mining whenever he was a teen and had pulled in more gold worth over $13 million by. He was 24 years old at the time, and led 8 Gold Rush Parkers and other spin-offs trail, who had made $24 million in just season 14, and now nothing. Not even. In other words, Parker wasn't the weird one, flashy person. He never lived like a famous person. He didn't own houses or, in fact, luxury cars were at the top of his success. He said he slept on a friend's couch in Los Angeles. He didn't blow his, so he spent his money on status symbols instead. It on trips to remember times with his dad, taking his team hunting on the weekends. It was series tickets and trips to Las Vegas. It was never about the money, loyalty and experience. That way of thinking came. His great-grandpa carved from his roots a life away from the wilds of Alaska in 1937. His grandmother joined him, gets up at 4:30 every day to go to work. Parker grew up with people who didn't stop, who worked through pain, who didn't give up no matter how hard the conditions were. What made him who he was. And that's what brought him down. So it was painful to watch him spend an entire worked with his grandpa all summer, having dinner together every night, hearing the kind of stories that last for generations. The one he says he wishes he had recorded meant more to him than any gold bar. Parker always understood that money fades. What mattered was legacy. And now that legacy is at risk. Season 15 was meant to be his comeback, his big year, the one where he hit 10,000 ounces and blew the fight away. Instead, it's the season people are calling cursed equipment breakdowns, permit nightmares, back-to-back civil threats. It was all stacked against him, and while Parker tried to stay determined to work longer and smarter, wasn't enough. The stress got to them, and something broke, and no one knows what. The $16 million he made comes next. This season is held up by court cases. The claims have been put on hold, spread out. Some are keeping quiet, and will do their best to keep things together, but there would be no Parker at the center of everything. It doesn't feel the same. This was the Parker did not win the biggest bet he ever made. Just rent the land like he did before, bought it outright. So there were no monthly payments. There are no fees or royalties. But it also, that check put all the risk on him. He agreed to pay $15 million up front. Paid, got nothing back. And that was just to start right away. Because there is gold at Dominion. It wasn't just sitting on the surface, it was reached from more than 40 feet below. The tools would cost millions more. Fuel time and work by the numbers. It looked like a smart move to hold territory. Something like 80,000 ounces of gold at prices on the market right now are about $2,000 per ounce. That's $160 million in the bank. It wasn't just a mine that Dirt Parker saw. He thought it could be a future if he could pull it off. 1,000 ounces a year for 6 seasons. That was the goal. He would get there. It was the plan, but there was a catch. He only had 6 years left on the water, permits and licenses, and then no promise if regulators didn't renew. The license, everything that was left in the ground would mean nothing. So Parker, he went like Parker always does. Allen and his team began moving dirt by 25 million baht, more than how long the claim lasts before it breaks down to more than 4 million yards a year. And that stuff moves when you move it, increases its size, making it closer up to 30 million yards. The amount of work isn't just tiring. It's the crushing equipment wears out the workers. When plans fall through, the pressure doesn't. If you fall on one person, you'll hit everyone. Tyson Lee, you could feel it everywhere. Mitch Blaschke and the rest of the crew every week, because there wasn't a lease and no safety nets. Every second of wait time cost money. Parker didn't get back was $1. Wouldn't come back. And Parker failed wasn't a choice after that check, not on that date. Not when the whole plan depended on him staying. 1,000 ounces a year ahead of schedule. Sure, but let's go back a bit first. Parker didn't get here by being careful. As soon as he walked into the gold rush, got a lot of attention in 2010. He showed that he was cut from a not the same cloth. While other miners, Parker bought cars and toys and ground plan and team by 24 hours. He had brought in $13 million in gold by season 14. His haul made $24 million, and the show. He had people follow him to the Klondike. Even in Guyana and Oregon, he was a heavy-duty machine, a planner, and most of all however, in season 15, something changed. Who had Dominion was a game-changer, but so Parker stated that it was the pressure. It wasn't the cost that scared people. He lost his team because they were cut back. People who had been with him since. To begin with, he would rather lose cash than he didn't want to lose them, which is why make the choice to grow, not shrink or turn around. He didn't bail. Instead, he bought more land and grew. In his business, he even locked in a royalty take care of metallic minerals for. They have the only right to mine a 12-kilometer stretch of Australia Creek. That deal alone required at least $1 million a year promise plus payments for royalties on. He pulled every ounce. So not only did to take care of Dominion, he now had a whole second site under Little Flake. That's how fast the mining size grew, which is what made the crew vibrant and important. Parker said it. He didn't want anyone to be around him who would crack under stress if someone they were out because they couldn't keep up. Why not? There are no second chances, and with a $200 million in the long run at stake, the bar was higher than ever. But things didn't stay easy because the more the business grew, the less there was room for mistake. Every time the weather changes, wash the plant. Ounce short of limit, it all added up. That's where the trouble began. Having an effect on relationships. Parker, we didn't see much of Rick Ness that year. In fact, they hardly ran into each other. Parker only met Rick 2 times in real life. They had one big event over the summer. Sit down on camera to talk about what Rick was going through. But after that, they ran in different lanes. The same was true for Tony Beats back then. Parker and Tony got into a fight over everything. Let's ground payments happen, but they stayed away a little farther this time. Coffee with friends between scenes. Parker didn't owe anything else. Tony. Anything else. He owned heists in the ground that he had his passes but wasn't cutting checks for royalties, which, not as many fights, but not as many connections, and being cut off cost something. When the Dominion stress began. Getting up there wasn't much outside. Parker was locked in with his head down. He was trying to keep up at the same time, was still going strong with his public. He signed a big deal with these people. Metal. He kept working on a 400-hole drill program. He even won the Robert. The Yukon will give the Elaki Award in 2022. Government to take care of the environment just 2 years before his surgery. Under the gun. That's how fast things go. Minds can change from one season to the next. You're getting awards 1 minute and being looked into outside of work. Parker low-key as always. Moving around and staying put. He didn't live in. He can party in private planes or huge mansions. Couch surfed in LA for 1 week, and in once a week in Mexico. And sometimes the Bahamas. Kiteboards, ride snowmobiles, and ride snow bikes in the cold when they don't have to. He's not flashy. He's just set up to move and push. And maybe that's part of the trouble, is that everyone else was interested in how 20-somethings could make $13 million by age 24. Parker was away, putting it back to work. Putting it at risk of going back to new ground, and not in a fancy office 40 feet below ground at Dominion Creek, where one wrong move could kill a whole season by 2024. According to Parker, for about $8 million. Other brought it closer to $10 million. Either way, it wasn't what most people thought it would be. For a guy who has been in a Best Discovery Channel program he hasn't worn for more than 10 years. He bought watches. That cost more than a car. He doesn't collect old cars. Most news stories say they even own a house. The simple one in Hannes, Alaska, sitting down on private land next to a calm lake, 2000, built in 2015, 1,500 square feet. Metal roof, wood frame that's not quite Hollywood. What makes at one point reports made it even more shocking. Rumors spread that he bought a $950,000 mansion. Parker flatly denied. It said he was poor and that he liked sleeping on friends' beds. Instead, that wouldn't be for most people. It makes sense, but with Parker it follows. This is the same person who used all of college savings to bet on himself when most of the teens chose shared rooms. He had to choose between different types of rocks, and buying lets that $17 million bet happen. It wasn't his first time on Dominion Creek, was just the biggest and most well-known. The most dangerous. That ground wasn't simple gold. It was 40 feet deep in ice. He'd have to move 30 million tons of dirt. Years and yards of dirt to make. That's more than 5 million yards per year. Year after year, all year long, not just on the machine, but on the people who run them. It wasn't a small mine. It was a monster that was after gold, and Parker was the only one willing to tame it, even if gold prices hit all-time highs. But he didn't. Slow down. He used everything he hired. He had a bigger crew and more tools. Metal Records signed revenue deals with minerals to dig in Australia Creek, paying early fees and promising a $1 million a year in work, which he wasn't. Building a gold mine was all he did. Kingdom, and the work didn't end in Yukon. His journey took him to Guyana, Papua New Guinea, Australia, Alaska, and Brazil. From the Klondike to the bush. From the ice toe when other teams were in the rainforests, Parker was putting it away for the winter. Shooting from halfway around the world, Parker set out to find gold where few others had, would be brave enough to run supplies, in languages he didn't know, while facing bugs, whatever it is, mudslides. Altitude sickness stood in the way of him getting another payoff. He got sick once at 16,000 feet in the Andes. Height sickness knocked him out, but he didn't give up. And through it all, the film kept rolling on Gold Rush. Parker's rights to show and sell goods, that funds that. The $2,500 a show pay added up quickly. Some news sources say he makes more than $4 million a year when you add it all up, making money from mining, TV fees, and license. His team makes between $10,000 and $15,000 a year. As much as $25,000 per show. It's a machine that makes money. But here's the twist: even with lots of money, with all the shows, and the whole, Parker was never mining the world while watching, not really after the money. He was following his heritage and trying to live up to his grandfather's rules. Trying to keep his crew safe while they try to show that someone from Alaska's small, quiet town could fight the worst people in the world business and win. Which is why now it hits harder than anyone thought it would, because he or she is not a famous person caught in, no joke. This is Parker Schnabel, the kid who grew up in mud, the person the person who built a huge business with and a group of diehards to see it all put on hold, even if only for a short time. Fans, investors, miners, and everyone else. His $16 million haul from this year put an end to his claims at Dominion, under review by the law of his revenue sites. The future is unclear. And while continues to show scenes from season 15, there is an elephant in the room that everyone knows about. It's not being said, but everyone feels it. The question now is, will Parker come back, stronger than ever? Or does this chapter show that a long run is over?